You have 48 hours. The government just collapsed. Banks are frozen. Borders are closing. And you need $4,000 in cash that criminals will actually accept, or your family drowns in the ocean trying to escape. This isn't a hypothetical. This was the choice facing 1.5 million Vietnamese families in 1975. And the ones who survived all did the same thing. They wrapped their life savings in fabric the size of a deck of cards and got on a boat. Let me show you something that will completely change how you think about wealth, because everything you've been told about gold is wrong. Dead wrong. Gold isn't for buying bread during a collapse. It's not for trading at checkpoints. It's not even for surviving the crisis. Gold is for one thing and one thing only: getting your family across a border when the entire system fails and rebuilding your life on the other side with your wealth intact. I'm about to walk you through the exact protocol that saved millions of lives across multiple refugee crises, and I'm going to show you why the families with bank accounts died while the families with gold lived. Saigon, April 30th, 1975. You're standing in your home watching the news. Communist forces are entering the city. You have 72 hours to make a decision that will determine whether your children live or die. Stay under communist rule or risk drowning in the South China Sea on a smuggler's boat. Your neighbor is a doctor. He saved lives for 20 years. Right now, he's in his living room, wrapping extraordinarily thin sheets of pure gold in fabric. They call it kim thanch, gold leaves. He's converting his entire life savings into something that fits in his jacket pocket. The legitimate ferry to Malaysia costs $10 per person. Sounds reasonable, right? Except there are no legitimate ferries anymore. The only option is a smuggler's boat across open water. The price? $1,000 per person. Your family of 4 needs $4,000 in cash, in a currency the smuggler will actually accept, and you have 48 hours to get it. The doctor with the gold leaves? He's boarding the boat. The family with $50,000 in their Saigon bank account, still waiting at the dock when the boats leave. 1.5 million Vietnamese fled across the South China Sea using this exact protocol. This isn't fiction. This is documented survival strategy during one of the 20th century's largest refugee crises. Here's what nobody is saying out loud about precious metals, and it's going to sound harsh, but you need to hear it. Gold isn't insurance against collapse. Gold is insurance for the moment when borders close, institutions turn against you, and you need to physically move your family across an international boundary with everything you've accumulated in your entire life. Let me show you the autopsy. Because the cause of death is always the same, and the survivors all carried the same insurance policy. The Vietnamese boat people developed one of the most sophisticated wealth escape systems in modern history, and it centered entirely on kim than, those gold leaves. Here's the absolute genius of it. A standard 1-ounce gold bar is worth $4,300 at today's prices. That's 31 grams of gold. It's conspicuous. It's recognizable. Any border guard conducting searches immediately identifies it. But gold leaves? Extraordinarily thin sheets of pure gold pressed into stacks and wrapped in fabric, flattened into packages no larger than a deck of playing cards. When discovered during searches, they could be mistaken for aluminum foil by officials doing quick inspections. A Vietnamese refugee family could carry thousands of dollars in value in a package weighing virtually nothing. When a guard discovers what looks like thin metal sheets, their immediate assessment might be that it lacks significant value. But discovery of a recognizable gold bar? Immediate confiscation. Here's the revelation that changes everything about how you should think about wealth. These families didn't accumulate gold to spend during the crisis. They accumulated it to cross borders during the crisis and rebuild after the crisis ended. Let me take you to another place in time where the exact same pattern played out. Vienna, 1938. You're a Jewish banker watching the Anschluss unfold. Nazi Germany has just annexed Austria. You have a certificate of deposit worth 50,000 Reichsmarks sitting in a Vienna bank. Your colleague across the street has 3 diamonds sewn into his coat lining. Guess which one of you makes it to Switzerland alive? The most extensively documented case involves Oskar Schindler bribing SS officers with black market goods, food, and diamonds to secure the release of hundreds of Jewish workers from concentration camps. These bribes worked because diamonds and gold retained purchasing power even as the Nazi system was engaged in systematic genocide. The critical element? These bribes could not be refused by Nazi officials because they represented real value that could be converted to currency or consumed directly. A person holding a certificate of deposit from a Vienna bank could not use that document to bribe a border guard. The document was either worthless or it could be used to identify the holder as a target for arrest. Same pattern, same stages, same outcome? Paper assets that depend on institutional validation evaporate the moment those institutions become your enemy. Tangible assets that require no external authority maintain value because their physical properties, their elemental composition, their density, their rarity are recognized universally. Let's forensically examine what safe passage actually costs in contemporary conflict zones, because this isn't ancient history. This is happening right now. Syria, 2015 to 2016. 1 million Syrians reached Greece in 18 months. The pricing structure was remarkably consistent. Smugglers charged approximately 1,000 euros per person for a seat in a rubber dinghy to cross from Turkey to Greece. The legitimate ferry ticket? 10 euros. That's a 10,000% markup created by converting a legal journey into an illegal one managed by criminal networks. A Syrian family of 4 needed 4,000 euros, months or years of savings simply to secure passage to Greece. Critically, this price was denominated in euros or US dollars. Families needed to convert local Syrian currency into foreign currency that smugglers would actually accept. Syrian pounds? Worthless to the smuggler. They wanted hard currency or gold. Ukraine, February 24th, 2022. Russian tanks crossed the border at dawn. 50,000 people fled in the first 48 hours. Banks suspended electronic transfers. ATMs emptied within hours. You have $20,000 in your account. On paper, you're financially secure. In practice, you have absolutely nothing. One Ukrainian refugee made headlines. He escaped with Bitcoin on a USB drive and a written seed phrase. He sold some to people he knew personally for cash, obtaining $600 worth of Polish zloty to buy food and fuel. The tech media celebrated this as the future of refugee wealth. Here's what they didn't tell you. Bitcoin worked for exactly one documented refugee out of 5.8 million who fled. Let me show you why digital assets completely break down during actual collapse. Bitcoin requires internet connectivity to verify the blockchain. It requires electricity to power devices. It requires access to cryptocurrency exchanges willing to convert crypto to cash. And it requires familiarity with digital security procedures. Gold requires none of this. Zero. A refugee with gold can cross into any country with any degree of economic development, and gold will retain its value and convertibility. Gold can be traded in the wealthiest countries with sophisticated banking systems, and it can be traded in the poorest countries with only informal currency markets. Why? Because gold is universally recognized. It's been recognized for 5,000 years. Here's the most telling detail in that Ukrainian Bitcoin case. The refugee didn't continue living in Poland as a Bitcoin holder. He converted his Bitcoin to fiat currency as rapidly as possible. Even in the most favorable circumstances imaginable for cryptocurrency, a tech-savvy refugee from a country with functioning cryptocurrency infrastructure, digital assets are treated as an intermediate step toward obtaining hard currency that can be spent on food, shelter, and passage. Venezuela provides the perfect control case. When the Bolivar collapsed from 6.3 per US dollar in 2013 to over 3,000 per dollar by 2016, inflation reached 4,000% in 2017 alone. Your $10,000 in savings became worth $250 literally overnight. Venezuelans who had accumulated savings in local currency watched their wealth evaporate like water on hot pavement. Those who had gold, they saw the nominal Bolivar value increase substantially and could trade gold in black markets for US dollars at rates reflecting true international value. If you're realizing that everything you thought you knew about protecting your family is completely backwards, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a helicopter emoji in the comments if you're already positioning yourself for what's coming. And tell me what you want me to investigate next. I read every single one. One of you said it perfectly after my last video. Gold isn't for getting you through the collapse. It's for setting you up on the other side. Exactly right. Let's keep going. Now let's talk about what happens when you actually reach a safe country, because this is where most people's escape protocol falls apart completely. Under the Bank Secrecy Act, anyone entering or leaving the United States with more than $10,000 in currency must file FinCEN Form 105. Here's the legal loophole that reveals exactly why gold beats cash every single time. Physical gold, bullion, and bars are not classified as currency or monetary instruments under the Bank Secrecy Act. Someone carrying $50,000 worth of gold bars across the U.S. border does not technically trigger the Form 105 filing requirement. Someone carrying $10,001 in cash absolutely does. But here's the trap that catches almost everyone. While gold is not classified as currency, it's still subject to customs declaration obligations. Failure to declare precious metals accurately results in seizure under customs enforcement powers. Not declaring gold isn't a Bank Secrecy Act violation, but it is a customs law violation, and it results in confiscation of the entire amount under civil asset forfeiture statutes. The procedural mechanics are absolutely brutal. When U.S. Customs seizes your assets, they issue a notice of seizure. You have 30 days to respond. For someone who just fled a war zone with no legal representation, no understanding of American legal procedures, and potentially no stable address, this process becomes practically impossible to navigate. The burden of proof falls entirely on you to demonstrate the seized assets are not connected to illegal activity. For someone fleeing a conflict zone with gold accumulated through decades of working and saving, proving legitimate source without access to bank records or documentation becomes extremely difficult. Stay with me because this is where theory meets ground truth and most people's strategy completely collapses. A 1-ounce gold bar represents $4,340 at current market prices. For a refugee attempting to bribe a border guard for passage costing $300 to $500, offering an entire 1-ounce bar represents massive overpayment. You're now in complex negotiations about change. And here's the problem. A 1-ounce bar cannot be simply broken into fractions without specialized equipment. If you offer a bar worth $4,300 for passage costing $300, you have no practical way to access the remaining $4,000 in value without finding a jeweler to melt and divide it, unlikely at a border checkpoint in the middle of the night. The optimal denomination is the fractional bar, specifically 1 gram, 5 gram, and 10 gram bars. A 1 gram gold bar weighs 0.032 troy ounces and is worth roughly $140 at current gold prices. It's small enough to use as a medium of exchange for specific services without complex negotiations. A refugee can offer a 1 gram bar for passage, and the guard knows instantly the approximate value. No negotiations, no confusion. This distribution provides multiple massive advantages. It reduces catastrophic loss if a single bar is discovered and seized. It provides granularity for actual transactions, and it allows strategic deployment of wealth at different stages of escape. You use 1 gram bars for fuel and local guides in the early stages, 5 or 10 gram bars for the main smugglers, larger bars for final transactions in the destination country once you're establishing yourself. Here's what the historical data is screaming at us about why hard metals work when authority collapses. Gold represents value that requires no explanation, no justification, no appeal to external authorities for validation. When a border guard encounters someone offering a gold coin, the guard instantly recognizes genuine value without needing to verify through any institutional mechanism. During state collapse, precisely when escape protocol becomes necessary, the institutional authority that validates paper currency completely evaporates. A guard from a regime losing a war will not accept that regime's currency as payment because the guard fears the regime will collapse entirely, rendering the currency worthless. Gold transcends any particular regime or political system. A Nazi official in the final days of World War II would refuse a suitcase full of Reichsmarks, but he might accept gold as a bribe precisely because gold maintains value across regime changes. One of you commenting on my last video said it perfectly. Your grandfather, who went through 2 world wars in Germany, often said you needed enough silver or gold coins to be able to bribe a guard. Your grandfather understood what money actually is when the state becomes your enemy. The certainty of liquidity shapes the guard's willingness to accept the bribe. Gold can be converted to cash in any country in the world at any time at a price determined by well-established global markets. When you offer a guard a gold bar, that guard understands they can walk into any gold buyer or international banking institution and convert that gold to cash within hours. That's why they accept it. For someone successfully reaching a safe country and seeking to keep their accumulated gold without seizure, proper documentation becomes absolutely essential. The critical principle is this: declaring assets at the border creates friction and delays, but failure to declare creates near certainty of seizure. The most effective legal strategy involves carrying proof of purchase, invoices, receipts, certificates of authenticity, assay certificates. For someone who accumulated gold over decades before fleeing, this documentation may be impossible to obtain, but even partial documentation strengthens your legal position dramatically. Once customs officials discover you attempted to conceal assets, your credibility is destroyed. It's generally far more effective to declare all holdings upon arrival and accept the delays and inquiries that result, rather than attempt partial concealment that's likely to be discovered anyway. A more sophisticated strategy? Enter initially without attempting to import large quantities, then later import metals through legal channels once you've established residency and can work with legal counsel. This approach avoids the risk of having all your accumulated wealth seized at the initial border crossing. So what do you actually do? 5 elements. 1. Accumulate fractional gold now, not 1-ounce bars, 1 gram, 5 gram, 10 gram denominations. Purchase small quantities continuously, over years, not large quantities suddenly that attract attention. 2. Distribute across your body during transport: money belt, pockets, clothing linings, shoes. If any single location is discovered, your entire wealth is not lost. 3. Assume 10 to 30% loss to bribes, seizures, and theft. Accumulate more than you expect to need. This is the insurance premium you pay for survival. 4. Declare all holdings at destination country borders. Carry any documentation you have. Engage legal counsel immediately upon arrival. 5. Understand this is insurance for the worst-case scenario, not for buying bread during collapse, for crossing borders when institutions fail, and preserving accumulated life savings across regime changes. If this forensic breakdown gave you a completely new lens on what wealth actually means, hit subscribe. This one was directly inspired by your comments demanding practical survival assets instead of financial theory. Drop a helicopter emoji if you're already positioning yourself for what's coming. Tell me what you want me to dig into next. The question isn't whether you'll be affected by collapse. The question is whether you'll see it coming or whether you'll be standing at a closed border wondering why your bank account shows $20,000 on paper but the ATM is empty and the border is closed. While the person next to you with a deck of card-sized package of gold leaves is boarding the boat to safety. Pattern recognition isn't pessimism, it's preparation. The precedent isn't ambiguous, it's definitive. 1.5 million Vietnamese, millions of Jewish refugees, 1 million Syrians, 5.8 million Ukrainians. Same protocol, same asset class, same outcome. Not if you'll need it. When?